here's today, you go to a $90,000 school times 4 years, you're 300,000 in debt if you didn't get any scholarships, grants, or financial aid. He gave the other scenario where you become a welder, 20, 30, 40,000 in a certification, you could start making 100,000 in 2 years. And you need to do some extrapolation in the different careers of what you're doing. But near term meaning 3 to 5 years, financially speaking, I think it's the trade school route.
Randy, good morning. I am excited to jump in to a discussion around what I thought was a compelling guest speaking about some super exciting stuff.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, the guest you're referring to is who? Jacob Doss?
Yeah, Jacob Doss.
Yeah, no, I really liked him. I mean, I could have spent the whole episode talking about sports and football and
Believe
all
me,
the
I know,
from
Randy.
there.
You two could have gone off and had some strategy sessions related to X's and O's.
Yeah, for sure. Now I'm excited to do a follow-up episode and discuss some of the details, share some insights, and provide some tips to our audience members.
That's a good idea. Follow-up episodes, I think, would be fun. We've had so many wonderful guests, and there's so much left to speak with them about. There's a couple of things that we heard from Jacob that I thought we'd pick up on. Number one, he's a coach, still is a coach, was a coach. He's a former athlete himself, playing at a high level. Number two, he's clearly had a fascinating career, including now a co-founder of a trade school business and financing prior to that for trade schools. And
Yeah,
then
definitely an entrepreneur for sure.
he's got that entrepreneurial journey going. And then also he's got a bit of an inside scoop into this whole financing of school altogether, whether it be what is the traditional path that you and I call the 4-year university college, and then what it looks like to attain or obtain financing for trade school.
Yeah, and his perspective is really objective and rather than subjective because he's been through both sides, right? He got a scholarship and went through what was it, Wyoming, right? He played football there as well, and now he's into the trade school market as well. So yeah, very interesting background.
Let me start with a question that you have a lot of experience with from your position as a coach and a father of a couple of kids playing sports. We've got Jacob as a coach, and there's this world we live in that I see with my 4 children of this wildly intense focus on winning in sports, on the preparation to achieve at a certain level in sports, starting as early as elementary school. And I want to hear from you, what are we doing for our kids or to our kids with that element of intensity and really, really high focus on winning and getting ready for a career in or a position to play at a higher level in sports?
Yeah, no, good point. Or good questions. First thing I want to address is that I think in general, there are a lot of parents that have their kids playing sports at a young age, which is good. And I encourage cross-functional sports. I don't encourage specialty, focusing on football at a young age, and that's all you do. A lot of the better athletes in the NBA, a lot of better athletes in the NFL and even other professional sports, you can see those successful athletes played multiple sports when they were young. Point is that I think there's a bigger emphasis nowadays to have that specialty because I think there's a misconception where parents, they think their kids are going D1 at a very young age and they'll invest anything and everything to get them to that D1 level. What I mean by that is they'll invest thousands and thousands of dollars in training equipment, trainers, specialty trainers, skills coaches, what have you. But if you look at the statistics, it's probably less than 2.5% of high school students that go on to play at that next level. So first thing I want to emphasize is I think there's a misconception in terms of my athlete is going to play Division I at the next level. And if you can just ask many parents that have their kids in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even high school for that matter, and say, what are you doing this for in terms of that sport? They think that they're going to D1, right? And I think that's the big misconception there.
So when you are speaking with your own children, can you kind of share a little insight into what that sounds like, balancing that desire to win, that desire to succeed, and then also balancing perhaps the dreams they have to play a D1 sport? I mean,
Yeah, no. So winning to me is important as a coach, right? You hear a lot of coaches talk about, oh, it's not all about winning. I agree. I'm not at win at all costs, but winning is important. And you want to set that kind of, call it mindset with the students, as well as the student athletes, that you want to win. Because at the end of the day, your program is defined by how many wins and losses you get, right? If you lose 30 games in a season, I don't care what it is. I don't see a lot of success there, right? You have to win at some point. So back to your question in terms of the, call it, principles I instill with my boys, is I want them to have that winning mentality, that winning mindset, and do anything and everything you can do to be a winner, right? If you fall down, get back up and move forward. If you lose, it's not a loss, it's a learning experience, right? Focus on the process, not the outcome. So it's important to win, and you need to make sure that kids have that mindset to win. Otherwise, I think you're setting them up for failure, where they're in that position and mindset. Oh, it's okay. I don't need to go 110%, right? So winning is important, and I always tell my boys is compete in everything you do, whether it's in basketball, whether it's applying for a job, whether it's applying for college, whatever it is, compete. And in order to compete, you have to win.
it's the who you are when the jersey comes off as much as it is how you perform on the court, which I think is something you've spoken about before.
Yeah, no, that's important. Again, it's your overall character at the end of the day. And I think Jacob Doss mentioned this in his episode, or in the episode that we recorded, is what are you going to do when you face adversity, right? And that's the training that happens. So there is a phrase of these Navy SEALs, they sink to their level of training. And going about talking about winning, that mindset, whatever you set your mindset to, you're going to sink to that level of training, whatever it is.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the financing component that we heard Jacob speak about. You know, we've spoken a little bit about on prior episodes, Randy, related to getting the financing necessary to getting to a four-year college. We heard Jacob speak about his experience in a prior company that he's was a big part of, related to getting the necessary financing to go to trade school. Can you just elaborate on where things are in terms of ensuring students are getting the financing they need, and what type of challenge that is on families on a go forward? And I'm referring specifically to the four-year college.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of families that come to me and ask me, what's the best path to college? What's the best path post high school? And when I say best path, there's a lot of factors that go into that in terms of financial factors. There's the emotional lifestyle. And then, of course, there's the academics, right? Making sure that that's the right fit. But strictly speaking, on a financial perspective, I believe the best path is to go to junior college. Go to junior college, save 2 years. You're not, in many junior colleges, you're probably not even paying anything out of pocket, and then transfer to a top school. In terms of finance, right? Financial situation, the overall cost there. But there's also the experience of living on campus your freshman year, which can be priceless, right? Learning how to live away from your family and kind of growing up. And one of the things that we talked with Jacob Doss on is that investment and a return on investment. So he went through the example of, here's today, you go to a $90,000 school times 4 years, you're 300,000 in debt if you didn't get any scholarships, grants, or financial aid. He gave the other scenario where you become a welder, 20, 30, 40,000 in a certification, you could start making 100,000 in 2 years. And you need to do some extrapolation in the different careers of what you're doing. But near term, near term meaning 3 to 5 years, financially speaking, I think it's trade school route, right? But if you look at, okay, I want to be a doctor in 10 years, extrapolate that out, that return on investment, it's probably better to go on to college. So you need to look at those factors in terms of near term, long term investment, but most importantly, that return on investment. What are you getting?
And so, Randy, if I listen to what you're saying, you're focused on the return on investment. You're focused on sharpening skills, right? In a perhaps junior college or trade school, for that matter. Help me with overcoming what still exists, which is the stigma around a junior college or a trade school. And what I mean by that, just to make sure that I'm clear on the question, is there still seems to be like that settling, or there's something wrong with that, as opposed to going to the big named 4-year college.
Yeah, and I think that starts with the parents, but also continues with the students. And what I mean by that is parents nowadays, they've always been taught go to college, right? And whether it's right or wrong, that's just the mentality of you go to high school, get good grades, go to college, do well there, and get a job. That's kind of the path there, right? For students, there's I don't know if it's a misconception, but if you don't get into your 4-year college, you go to junior college. And for some students, I know directly, I've talked to a lot of students where they've worked their butts off in high school and they've got good grades. And for whatever reason, they didn't get accepted to 4-year college and they didn't really want to settle, like you called it, for junior college. In reality, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think there's a statistic where if you go to junior college, the likelihood of you completing a 4-year degree decreases. Yeah, I need to look at those specific numbers, but point is there is a misconception, there is a stigma, and I think the only way that that's going to change is if there's more students showing that you go down this path, say it's junior college, and there's a better return on investment on that or outcome.
Similar note, have we boxed our kids into definition of success in the K through 12 education system?
Yeah,
that's a
no, for sure.
that's a
I think
that's
so.
a yeah. I mean, that's a multiple episode question and topic. But when I listen to you speak about, as parents, how we can set the discussion up differently and present the options differently for our children, I want to talk about our education system, and I want to hear from you sincerely. Have we somehow failed our kids, as here we are in the 21st century, to really consider what success looks like post high school?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. How would you react if Selah went to you before she announced her acceptance to college and said, Dad, I'm so excited. I'm going to a trade school. This is what I want to do. And I love it. I have a career path and I'm going to start trade school next week. What would be your response?
I would jump for joy.
Yeah.
I really
Okay.
would. And I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Good. Good.
that's part of the excitement around something having worked, related to encouraging Selah's uniqueness, not running from it, and her having identified what makes her her. So, but say more about that, because that's my personal reaction and response had that Selah come to
Yeah,
me.
no, no, and I knew you were going to respond that way. And for me, if Reed 2 years back, 2 years ago, were do the same thing, initially I'd be, wait, son, what happened to your college dreams? Why not go to college? And not even looking at, again, financial return on investment, identifying your skills, knowing what you love, following your passion, not any of that. It's, again, we have this predetermined path of success is going to college. And, if Reed came to me and said, Dad, I'm going to a trade school. This is what I want to do. My initial reaction was, wait, what? Let's revisit that, right? Let's discuss it. Let's make sure you're making the right decision. Probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would say, no, 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 what are you doing? We're going to college. You're not going to a trade school. You're not going to junior college. You're going to a 4-year college. That's the path. But my point is that, yeah, I think we still have that misconception and we need to change that in order to get the students to a successful path. And there's multiple paths to reach that success.
So there's this point in time as we speak where we're seeing a shaking up of what seems to the potentially the federal financial aid and the availability potentially of that aid to attend a four-year university. Can you speak to that a little bit, just the current state of affairs and how that might impact families as they consider college and obtaining that aid necessary?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to share with the parents and families is that you need to understand your entire situation before you make a decision. What I mean by that is there are a lot of parents that think, "Oh, I can't go to this school. I can't attend this school because for whatever reason, I make too much money. I have a business. I have this much equity in my home." But that's why you need to fill out your financial aid forms accordingly, submit them, and then get a response from the school and their financial aid department and understand exactly what they're going to give you, what they're not going to give you, because there is a lot of aid available to families. There is need based aid, there is merit based aid, and there's also institutional aid. So there's many forms of aid that's available. So my first recommendation to families is apply and see what you can get. Don't make decisions in terms of we're not going to apply to this school because we can't afford it. You don't know yet, right? You don't know what the school is going to give you. So that's the first recommendation. And in terms of loans, there are a lot of families that say, "Oh, I don't want to take out loans and be $400,000 in debt." Certainly, that's a lot of loans that you don't want to take out, and there's ways to pay that off. But you need to be able to balance that in a sense that loans are okay if you take out the right ones, and if you get the ones that have low interest rate and not a lot of initial setup fees, and it's structured correctly to fit your financial goals. Again, it's every family is different. One loan, $50,000 to this family may work out for that family, but it may not work out for the other family based on their financial needs and what their goals are, near term and long term. So, and again, you mentioned it earlier, is the number of loans that are available or going to be available for students, and I think that's going to change over the next several years. In terms of today, Reed can apply for, even myself with the parent loans, we could apply for $100,000 loans every year. Do we want to take that out? Probably not. But do we want to take some out to offset the initial cost? Certainly, right? So I think there's a balance there in terms of taking out loans, and if you balance that with merit-based aid and institutional aids and grants and scholarships, you'll be able to have a clear path to support your education.
That's helpful and important to reiterate. What else did you take from our opportunity to speak with Jacob Doss? We've discussed sports, we've discussed financing, we've discussed trade schools, we've discussed even a little bit about that stigma, if you will, around a different path than a four-year college rather.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I had was being able to reassess and truly evaluate what's the best opportunity for your child, right? And there's so many factors in determining that. Um, Point is that Jacob, we asked him that question in terms of today with your kid. If you had a kid that's going to graduate, what would you recommend, trade school or college, right? And he kind of did the numbers, and making 100 over six figures right out of high school, 1-2 years out of high school, that's an amazing opportunity, right? And if it's something that you have a passion for. So I would say it's just really identifying the value of these trade schools and really looking at that best scenario in terms of success, right? Is a student successful if he goes to trade school? Is a student successful if he goes to a four-year college? Yes. The answer is yes, right? If they align their passions, interests, values, and skills and have a near and long-term path, or at least near long-term strategy and path, so they can see that accordingly.
There's an element that I appreciated that we've continued to see run through some of our recent interviews, which is that, if you will, saying that we have: discover what you can do with the awesomeness you have. And just how important it is to identify that, Randy, earlier on in your K through 12 education, because how effectively that can set you up for success post 12th grade year.
I really like that phrase, and I want to reemphasize that and make sure the audience members understand what that means is discover what you can do with the awesomeness that you have. And, discover is meaning explore, be free, understand your skills, your interests, values, and skills, and the awesomeness that you already have and the awesomeness that you'll continue to gain, right? If you take that mindset into consideration and really apply that in your daily lives, I think at the end of the day, you will win. You will win.
We've got to stop there. That was brilliantly put. And it's a privilege to get to do this with you, Randy. I'm excited about the interviews that we've had with impact makers and looking forward to our next episode.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time, Carter. I enjoyed our conversation. Again, with Jacob Dawes, he talked about college, trade schools, D1, businesses, his entrepreneur experience. He dropped a lot of knowledge and tips. And again, for all the audience members, tap and hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. We're going to continue to put out a lot of valuable episodes. Secondly, drop us a comment on those episodes. Comment, share any questions you may have. And then most importantly, go on to those Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, hit that follow button, give us 5 stars. And again, spread that positivity, continue to win on the court, continue to win in the classroom, and continue to win in life. Subscribe, comment, and share. Until next time, stay awesome.
Make it count.
All right, we'll see you on the next episode. WiddyUP.
WiddyUP, Randy.